takes press questions probably as often as President Trump does. These are two guys who aren't afraid to talk to the press and take any question that comes to them. We've seen that display time and time again. The gentleman from California, Mr. Kiley, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it was an honor to be with you and the ranking member as we had the chance to see firsthand what's going on in the EU and in the UK. Maybe this Raskin-Farage show could become a recurring event. It's gotten very interesting on both occasions. But I'd actually like to direct my questions to you, Mr. Price, at first. It's good to see you again. I think that those of us on the trip were really alarmed by the ways in which the tide is turning against free speech in the UK and the EU. And I think that there actually was quite a bit of bipartisan agreement among the members of our delegation on a number of these issues. So I was hoping you could give us a little context of what you think explains this. And I think that we understand that not every country needs to have has a First Amendment or needs to have the exact same standards or the exact same exceptions or the exact same ways that the law is applied. But we've always, I think, felt it important that we have an alliance with our European allies around the issues of freedom that stands in contrast to authoritarian regimes around the world, like in Russia, like in China, places where they don't have free speech. And so to the extent that these values are fraying among our allies, then it really harms our ability to stand up for the values of freedom around the world. So what do you think is going on? How can we sort of strengthen our alliance with our European allies around the issue of freedom of speech?
Thank you, sir. Well, what we've seen, sadly, over many decades, and it's accelerating, has been a consistent use of overbroad, vague laws to crack down on speech that's regarded as provocative or unorthodox. And I can give you, and I have given examples of the clients that I'm involved in representing, where they've been simply speaking about their faith publicly, or where they've been offering to talk to people. So things have reached a crisis point, though, and this is why I think it's important that Vice President Vance and the administration have intervened. And one thing I would say, without divulging any contents of conversations, but Representative Raskin and I had quite a good conversation about just how bad things had become in Europe. And I agree with you. I think there is a bipartisan realization, certainly on this committee, and I commend the work that it's doing, about the nature of the problem in Europe. With the DSA, though, we find then the European Union stepping into speech, regulating it, and bringing that restrictive model global. And this is where I think really the work that's been happening here is crucial, because we can't allow that to happen, because we're going back to COVID-style censorship all over again.
Thank you. And of course, it's doubly concerning when this actually implicates the free speech rights of Americans. But I would hope that moving forward, we can try to work with our counterparts in Europe to try to get back to having these shared values around freedom of speech, and we don't continue to see a divergence. Mr. Reed, I also wanted to ask you about the DMA, because based on, I know you represent smaller app developers, but we also spoke with folks who represent Apple and Facebook and others, and it's a matter of public record the way that these companies are now sort of uniquely targeted under this law and the similar law in the UK. And honestly, it caused me to sort of see some of the ongoing negotiations around tariffs and other issues through a somewhat different lens, because the way that American companies are being targeted with the DMA really is a tax or imposes or is a direct transfer of wealth from our country overseas. And these are some of the sort of non-tariff barriers that American countries are now facing. So could you give me your perspective on that and the DMA more broadly?
Right. It's ironic that, as you say, it's a non-tariff trade barrier, but the ultimate biggest loser is usually the smaller and medium-sized companies. Earlier, we heard a member of this committee just talk about bills here in the United States. The irony of those who supported those bills were also billionaire companies. We joked about the fact that it was the trillionaires versus the billionaires who went to war. And the problem when that happens, if any of you run a small business, is the small guy gets crushed. And what's happening with the DMA in Europe is their desire to put pressure on the US companies means that there are fewer services, fewer features, and less trust are available for the smaller businesses to take advantage of. And that's how we get crushed, and that ends up being as you say, a non-tariff trade barrier, because it puts the very companies that could compete with these giants at a disadvantage when they have to meet those new tests.
Thank you. And I think that this is going to be an important issue for us to remain focused on as to how we can alleviate these barriers that our companies are facing that honestly are hindering innovation in Europe as well. I yield back. Yield back to the chair.
Real clear on the most recent situation.